So I just want to welcome you to our series at home. I'm really excited to have our guest today, Dr. Risa Ryger, who's a good friend and colleague, and just really excited, and it's a lot of fun to get a chance to talk to you, Risa.
Lisa, I am so happy to be here with you today and to have a chance for us to have this conversation together, certainly at this most, crucial time.
Yes, this most crucial and difficult time, I think, for families, for parents, which we'll talk about today. How has it been for you and your family? I know that you're kind of at the epicenter of where this started in the U.S., or the first blow-up spot, which, right in the middle of it.
Exactly. I mean, literally, we are at ground zero. And so it was at the beginning, it was so frightening because we didn't know what to do. And there really wasn't clarity about that. And so what we did learn how to do in this community was how to take all the precautions that one could take. And so that was the start point. And we needed to learn how to shop differently, and buy, as you know, as is the proverbial example right now, buy toilet paper or not be able to buy toilet paper differently. But everything changed. Really, everything changed just like that.
Yeah. And for parents, which we're going to talk about parenting today, all of a sudden their kids were home from school, right? I mean, it wasn't like we had any warning, or, they just all of a sudden had their children full time.
Yeah, it went from life to tsunami. It's really, I think it's just been such a tsunami of change that it hasn't been in stages, at least not here. It's just gone to this place of not being able to, like you going through change. And so you take these different steps and you go step by step, and there you are in change. That really was not the case at all. That it's really just been tsunami and learning and getting one's own footing in all these different ways.
Yeah, yeah. And I think for parents in particular, it was such an adjustment, because usually your children are in school for all these hours, and now all of a sudden they're home. And for working parents, I think that was probably difficult. But even for parents who weren't working, it just was such a radical change, to having to be the support person for their kids' learning.
Yeah. So much so, Lisa, one of the things that I know I have older children, I know you do too, and so that parenting is forever.
Yes.
Parenting is forever. And so for some parents, they've had their young children at home. For other parents, myself included, having the older children, older young adults, come back home. And so basically for everyone in all different ways, shapes and sizes, that there's been transition, there's been demand for change. Like change has been the necessity of the time, and sometimes not knowing what to change to and where to change from.
Yeah, yeah. It was really, like you said, no preparation. Most changes we plan for, even if they're not changes we want. But this was one that nobody just really saw coming at them.
Yeah. I'll just share with you. I was reminded by one of my kids.
Uh-huh.
We were going to be moving. We had outgrown our house, and we were going to go into another house. And so we went. The kids were 4 and 7,
Uh-huh.
and we went looking at houses. And the time came, and I said, and we found the house. So I said to my younger daughter, I said, "We're moving to this house. We're going to be moving." And the house that we were looking at, the people had left.
Uh-huh.
And so she looked at me, and her bottom lip just was quivering away. Her eyes filled with tears, that point where they just like go over the bottom lip. And she looked at me and she said, "No, mommy, no, no, I'm too young for change. Maybe when I'm older, but not now. I'm too young." And then as we started talking about this some more, what I came to understand was that when I said to her, I said, you know, do you think that we just move, you know, just like the people, like we just move and we leave everything behind? And she looked at me, she was, and I said, and so came the discussion of, well, what does we're moving mean? Because she thought that we were leaving our perfectly fine house that had all kinds of stuff in it. I had seen other houses that had toys and kids and furniture, and we were coming to this empty house. And so we had a discussion about what was coming with us. And then she said to me, Mom, she says, Mom, that wall in the kitchen, it's very special to me. Can we take it with us?
Yeah,
And,
that's a little.
but it was just one of the reasons why I'm bringing it up is that for children of all ages, regardless of how young they are and regardless of how old they are, that change affects everyone. And that to have that moment of really having a window in a very different kind of way into the mind of a child to try to understand from behind their eyes what they're
Right.
experiencing, what they're feeling, and that as parents, as we try to explain and help smooth things, that we may not get yet what it's like for them or what their concerns and what their thoughts and ideas are. So as parents, I'm just going to say this and we'll go on to our next question, that to try to get behind what our children are responding to and what they're experiencing may be so important because we may be this and
Hmm.
they're that. And we're
Uh-huh.
doing this with this and we're doing a great job with this, but we're just kind of in the wrong spot.
Right, right, right. And I think that's so important to recognize the kids' understanding might be very different than ours.
Hmm.
Um, and, I think that's one thing that's been hard, especially with the lack of clear messaging that we've had around this. You
Yes.
know, that makes it even harder and more confusing, that our ideas. But I do relate to your story, and I have seen some kids who've, like, haven't misunderstood the things their parents are trying to tell them, or feel like, oh, this means, we're all moving here or something, like no, that's not what's happening exactly. It might be quarantining or something's going on, but it's complicated.
It is very complicated. And I think that one word is complicated because the complexity is just vast because every aspect of our lives is shifting. And as you talk about these different changes, also the ways that we cope may not be available to us and available to our children.
Hmm.
So complexity is one component of it. And the other is for parenting that, certainly, especially when your kids are at home, that it's relentless.
Yeah, it is. It's a very different thing to deal with them 24/7, than it is, to have a nice big break in the middle of the day that they're
Hmm.
accounting for and doing something constructive, that you know what they're doing. And it's a
Yes.
good, you know, yeah. Um, what are you seeing as the main stress on parents during this time? I know you work with parents and young children.
Hmm.
Um, what are you seeing parents go through?
Oh, Lisa, it is a time of such difficulty because to your point, one is that no one's getting the breaks that they used to have. Life doesn't look the way that it is, so that you could gear yourself. If you knew, well, it's breakfast time and breakfast time at home, but to get the kids out, up and out, it can be a little chaotic. And then they're where they are, we're where we are, and then I can and go on and take care of what I need to take care of. But when children are home, that doesn't happen. And so part of it is the stress of not being able to have that time to steady yourself, or it seems that, in the ways that we used to. And of
Hmm.
course, not this moment, but we, a little bit down the road of our talk, we can talk about how people can steady themselves when there's no time, you know,
Right.
steady themselves, in the moment. But so that's one component of it. And the other is that children, there's kind of nuts and bolts to this, where parents are now responsible for helping their kids be educated in a very ongoing fashion. And so there have been difficulties with getting onto links and getting their children set up, and the internet not working, or the sound is off, or whatever all of that is. So there's this ongoing stress, not just to keep everybody, kind of happy and healthy, but, happy, healthy, and everything else. So it's everything. And then so that when there are these kinds of, issues that come up with children and getting them settled into things that they really shouldn't know how to do. And they shouldn't know how to really be in school virtually and what that means, and be able to sit for all that time and to not know what's going on and not be able to elbow, the friend next to them, and, do all those pieces of what being, kids in school is all about. And so there they are by themselves with a screen and trying to get a level of engagement that's really unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
For parents, they're feeling like, oh my gosh, my child is not getting the education that they want, that they need, and they're not having the opportunity to socialize and really be able to, keep and maintain their relationships. They're not learning the kinds of frustration tolerance that they would learn in school, in a group setting where everyone's involved in this. And so there's the continual stress of, I think the best way I could describe it, since it's not just one stress, but it's the stress of the stress, it's the stress of the stress being everything.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's the biggest stressor. And I'll just share with you, I was giving a workshop about stress. And so I went through a list of a few kinds of stressors. And one of the stressors that I added was the expectations that we have of ourselves as women. Okay. And although it's not necessarily surprising, just to see it out there of people, of women choosing the expectations that they have of themselves as the biggest stressor,
Mm-hmm.
that is also what happens, because you have moms who are like, I can't even think of making another like dinner menu, right?
Uh-huh.
And then to have everything to be able to make for dinner on top of everything else that you've done in that day.
Right.
Not to leave the dads out. I don't want to leave the dads out. And for women, I kind of put them into the four F's. They're the finders, the feelers, the fixers, and the freelancers, which means and everything else, and everything else. And that it's also another stressor has to do with not being able to have impact in the way that you want, not being able to adequately, do what you've been doing, and you can't fix it. You can't fix it. That's one piece. The other piece is you're protecting your child from something that you can't see, right?
Right. And how scary is that? There's, how do and there's no way to absolutely protect them probably, rather than locking them in their room, I mean, it's really hard, and you don't want to do that either, because then, you're hurting them in other ways,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
So from the parent perspective, those are the stressors. From the child perspective, I mean, children, there are some children who, this is like the best thing that's ever happened because they don't have to go to school, meaning that, particularly for children who are having social difficulties or maybe academic difficulties, that there's a whole world of avoidance now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And what I hear from kids is I don't have to get out of bed as early because I don't have to drive to school. No. Or
Right.
college kids who are just saying, oh, I roll over and turn on my Zoom and I don't have to be in class. And
Yeah, and that's
anyway,
okay. I've seen teenagers and young adults, they're still on their pillows, when they have their phones in front of them. Uh, but they've already hit different stages in their lives,
yeah.
so basically, I think it hits people, both adults and parents, depending on what stages you are with your children.
Hmm.
a parent, and it hits children also. And the stressors for the children are also different depending on where they are developmentally. So we
Right.
do have an overarching stress, but there's stressors that are specific and more felt and
Mhm.
concerned and hurting and worrying people at
Yeah.
different developmental levels.
Right, right. So for those of us with older kids like you and I, is can we see our kids? What do we have to go through to be able to see them? Can we help them out if they're dealing with financial stress due to this, when with our own financial stress? I mean, I think about the different things that come up as, parents of adult children even. I was doing one of these series of experts with a woman who specializes in eating disorders, and her 20-something-year-old daughter got this near the beginning, and she was alone and pretty sick. Her mom wanted to go help her, and her daughter was like, "I'll get a restraining order. I don't want you to come. I don't want you to get sick." So there's, that's even with adult children, there's stressors.
And with adult children also, I mean, they can be out dating and going on trips and doing things and being in their workplaces and having those kinds of interactions and going out with their colleagues afterwards. And so there's a different kind of stress as a parent and as a young adult where people are being hijacked from their lives, right? And
Yeah.
so there's also, I don't want to set a bleak picture here, but there's also the opportunity to pivot and to do things a little bit differently and
Hmm.
to be able to, I mean, even dating doesn't have to stop now. It's
Right.
different.
Right. I know people who are dating and who are meeting people on, virtually, and then sometimes distanced in person. You know, yeah, but it's complicated, right?
Yeah, it is
And
very complicated.
also for, parents of college age students, they have maybe those students coming home right now for holidays, or
Mm,
as some schools are letting kids out for the semester now.
yeah.
um, so they're going to be home for a few months. Anyhow, so there's just all kinds of issues like that. And then what safety precautions do you take, and how do you work all that out?
Hmm.
For parents of younger kids, so they're dealing with the day in, day out, stressors, getting them fed, getting them educated, getting
Yes.
what they need to get done, trying to
Yes.
keep their own identity in some way.
Hmm. And for those parents and those children, because I've seen a lot of young children who are they're angry. There's a lot of anger. They're angry, they're anxious, and there are children who are really quite sad
Hmm.
because they can't be in the lives that they love. They can't see their friends the way they used to, being out at recess and kind of knocking into people and being in pileups, kind of like those puppies, you know,
Yeah.
at that time. And that they don't have that. They don't have their athletics afterwards. They don't have their art classes. They're not involved in these activities that are so important to them. It's so important in terms of their identities and how they let steam off and how they learn. And certainly, one of the things that we talk about is with all of this going on, how do you stay regulated? Right.
Yeah, so that was one of my next questions was how would you suggest well, first of all, for parents to deal with their stress, do you have some suggestions for them?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Mm.
Absolutely, yes. So there are several tiers
Okay.
of things to do. All right. So one thing is that um, one of the most important things to remember is that one, you're human, and that two, you, things aren't going to go the way that you necessarily wish that they could. So the first step really has to do with looking inward and really coming to grips with the control that you can have and the control that you can't have. And not just thinking about it on some kind of lofty, abstract way, but really taking it in. And certainly, it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing because if you look on, I don't know, Instagram or YouTube or something, you're going to see a family where on an afternoon they've gotten recycled materials and they're going to be recreating the skyline of Chicago. And you look at that and you think about yourself and you go, oh my gosh, that doesn't sound like me at all.
Uh-huh.
And um, and so one is coming, really coming to terms with the expectations. So there isn't the idea that, well, if I was enough, I would be able to fill in the blank. So
Yeah.
that's number one, is really just looking inside and discarding the delusion that people often use and suffer with, that there's some sort of thing called perfection.
Yeah.
So that's step one. The other thing is that not reacting, it depends on the situation, that not reacting is an active process. Deciding that you're not going to react to something, because if you start reacting to everything at home, because it's in your face all the time, and so it's so easy to react and react, that not reacting is an active process. And unless there's really a safety issue, there isn't very much that has to happen exactly in that moment. And so
Mhm.
sometimes we go immediately into old patterns and old scripts. And so that it's like you know it's not going to work. You know it's not going to have an impact, but it's like this itch that you have to, you just like want it to just come out and
Yeah.
to try to keep it back in and not scratch the itch. Okay, so that's one part. The other part is, what do you do to build emotional stamina? Because one of the things that we know, and we certainly have clarity about at this point, is this is not a sprint. We are not in a sprint. We are in a marathon. And not only are we in a marathon, but we're in a marathon, Lisa, where the route keeps changing. It's like, okay, flat land. I'm good on flat land. Oh, no, no, no. Now we're going up the hills. You're up the hills, and it's like, well, we're going down the valley, but it's a zigzag. And so that there's that happens as well. So what can you do? Let's say you're right in the moment, and what can you do? So in terms of building emotional stamina, and I have two resources that I would love to share with your
Yeah.
with the audience at another point in time. But just to let you know, so don't worry about having to remember kind of
Okay,
all.
these are the resources, and maybe we could post those so people
Yeah,
could access them or links to them.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. But also the idea that one, there is some kind of breathing and emotional steadiness that goes on, so that you have to be able to recognize when you're feeling stressed, know what stress is like for you. So when you feel that heat coming up the top of your head, that tightness in your shoulders, that you can identify what's going on with yourself. And that's step one, is to be able to connect inside. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, what do you do? So, simple breathing equation. This is the Dr. Ryger 4 plus 4 equals 8.
Okay.
And you can do anywhere at any time. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 8. Why? Why? So we need to breathe. One is that becomes a point of focus for us. And we know that when we're focusing, that we're able to decrease our stress. We're able to kind of decrease that discomfort that we have in ourselves, because we're not thinking ahead of ourselves, behind ourselves, but we're really able to, at this moment in time, be able to integrate. And then
Mm-hmm.
holding is a way of steadying. It's an interesting experience. And then the other
Mm-hmm.
part, the exhale of the 8, when we're in an activated state, when we're feeling that we're worried that there's some sort of danger, including emotional danger, worrying about our children, that activates that alert, that state of alert. And our breathing changes. And so when we exhale, and we exhale to 8, it signals to our bodies and it signals to our brains that we're in a place of safety. And so this is an active process that that go through it once, go through it twice. I mean, it takes nothing. It takes
Mm-hmm.
nothing to check in with yourself. And even you can give yourself a second to get a glass of water and just do a couple of breaths. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one, that's kind of one fast level of
Mm-hmm.
doing things. And certainly there are more we can do a little bit at a time. The breathing, by the way, is also a great thing to do with your kids.
Yeah, I was thinking it's simple enough. You could sit down and do this with a child, and
Mhm.
also children by a certain age could learn to do it on their own too.
Yes. Yes. And so that, because sometimes what happens is when parents tell kids, well, take a deep breath, they're like, but if you play with it and make it part of a
Uh-huh.
math equation, and you could also kind of move it along differently. So if your child is at a point where they're learning math, and you can do 4 + 4 = 8, you can do 3 + 3 = 6. You can do it every which way that you want, and so that
Mm-hmm.
everyone can have some sort of understanding that we can we may not be able to control what's going on outside of us, but we can look at our own feelings and be able to look at what's going on inside of us. And that's within the boundaries and the developing wherewithal of who we are and in our wholeness, which we don't have to give up.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Yeah, it's so important. Yeah. Um, with the kids that you're working with, how do you help them get regulated or start to regulate themselves? Um,
So the children have just been really extraordinary, Lisa. And there was one little guy I was working with, and who was really having a hard time and would get very upset. He was very reactive, and and we worked, and he got to the point where, I mean, he was just like a little bit more than 1 hand old. And he said to me one day,
okay.
Dr. Ryger, can you teach me something else to do to calm down when I get very upset? And so it was extraordinary because one, there's a
Yeah.
recognition of their feelings, and two is the idea that there's something I can do about it. And if you're 6 years old or 7 years old and you get the idea, you have the concept that there's something that you can do to calm yourself, that there's a way that you can take some control and have some mastery and really be able to do something for yourself, and in the best possible ways really connect with the power that you do have for
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah.
um, so for kids, and there are kids who are angry, so there are some children who draw, and I ask them to draw their anger. And drawing, for some children who need that's a way of expressing themselves. The drawings are incredible. Draw their anger, draw COVID. So drawing is one. The other is that there's something that if parents are amenable, I tell them, okay, if your kid's having a hard time, tell them to go blow. And so, if you have a cup that has a good secure lid, have
Mm-hmm.
your child blow bubbles
Uh-huh.
into their juice, milk, water, whatever it is, and have them blow bubbles into it. And so
Mm-hmm.
what it does is that it becomes its own little breathing exercise because the children are exhaling more than they're inhaling.
Yeah.
And that's a way of calming down. So we're looking for a kind of a release. Um, Another thing that they can do is they can draw on balloons. They can draw how angry they feel, or they can draw frustrated. They can draw whatever they want, and then they can, with parents, parenting watching, they can pop balloons, and kids
Mm-hmm.
can sometimes love them. Love doing that. And so those are some physical things. If you have bubble wrap, don't throw it away. have your kids stomp on the bubble wrap.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on your children, at least in my house, because one of the things that I like to do, and my daughters, and sometimes we do it virtually, and we pull my husband in also, is that we have something that we call dance it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes you just put the music on and you get going. That's another way. And for some children that works very well. I know I could give you more of a list, but I think that kind of
Yeah.
starts us off pretty okay.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah. And one of the other things I see stressing parents now is this question about whether kids should be in hybrid school or what to do about school.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've probably seen this too. I know your schools were hybrid for a while. Ours were still closed at that point. They're
Hmm.
talking about going to hybrid in January, but you know, not if we're in lockdown state, which we are right now. We're in the purple or whatever, in the whatever
Yeah.
because of our rising rates. But
Mhm. Yeah.
I just think those are hard decisions for parents, and you know, trying to learn to become a teacher if you're deciding to self-educate your kids, or what do you do?
But these are very tough, very tough decisions. And again, not everything can happen at once. So you have to give yourself a way of giving yourself time to just think, and as
Mm-hmm,
a parent to navigate that. Kids need to have their own space. Kids need a space that's a workspace. Kids
mm-hmm,
to be able to feel that it's going to be okay. And as a
mm-hmm.
parent, I think that since our children can really pick up on subtleties in us, that to be able to connect and authentically connect with your internal and authentic optimism is really important. We can't necessarily just tell our kids, everything's going to be okay. I mean, we can tell them that, but we have to be able to feel and be able to communicate that authentically. So this is another time where it's really taking a look inside yourself and finding that part of you that really does believe, even if you don't know how it's going to get there, even if you
Right.
don't know what the steps are, that you take that space and find within you that place of authentic optimism, because in that way you're really going to be able to lend that to your child and really communicate that in the way that makes sense.
Right.
Um,
And I think that's something that parent that's worth working on as a parent, because you're right, they do pick up on all these sensitive little
Everything.
everything, the nonverbal too, and so it's really important to try to find that feeling within yourself so you can genuinely convey it. I find that with even the adults that I work with, that it's really important to convey that hope that this is not forever, because it really isn't. I mean, it will end somehow. I don't know how. I wish I did, or when exactly, or it's not I can control it in any way. But I can say that I really am sure that this pandemic will end at some point and that we will move on.
Yes, and even if that's the spot that you go to, if
Hmm.
that's the authentic spot in yourself, if you can really connect with that and experience it yourself, that becomes your spot to go to.
Hmm.
And that's very important. We talk about, places that we like to go. Well, there's a place to be able to go inside yourself. That's your warm spot. That's your spot of self assurance and self reassurance.
Hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, since we're tiny, and I was thinking about this, especially earlier on in COVID, Lisa, when we were so socially, it's socially distant and locked at home. We were
Right.
we were sheltering at home and really not going out. That from our earliest life, I mean, I'm sure you remember with your kids and anyone that you've been around who's had a baby, that when you put your finger out, like that baby will hold on to your finger, right? And there's something about holding hands that holding hands is about means safety. And
Mm-hmm.
holding hands means reassurance. And that even if the person who you wished you were with isn't with you, that if you can invoke and evoke them for yourself, to hear them, and maybe even to, do your own hand holding and imagine that being the person. We need our own reassurance. We need our connectedness. And
Yeah.
so the idea of holding hands is a place of safety. One, it's a place of safety. And as we do that, we're not alone. We're in connection. When someone's holding our hand, and they're putting their fingers around our finger, that at that point there's something that happens in that space that just feels different.
Mm-hmm.
Just some of the beautiful parts of human connectedness
Mm-hmm.
and how that can be a place of safety for us. So if you can't hold someone else's hand, hold your own hand, evoke that person,
Mm-hmm.
and imagine what that person's hand would feel like, what they might say to you as they're
Mm-hmm.
holding your hand. And you can do that for yourself as
Mm-hmm.
as you continue to sustain yourself and find self sustainability to be able to help to sustain all of the people who rely on you, look to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for parents, that's just so important because there is so much, you know, there's so many people often relying on them, their
Hmm.
children. Are.
Yeah. And one more thing I want to mention that is to make sure I talk about this, because I think this could be helpful also. And one of the things I love is I love giving parents resources, and I love
Mm-hmm.
giving parents options. And,
Mm-hmm.
and one thing I want to say, because I think it's really crucial, is that no matter what you do, it's better than doing nothing. Even if you don't do it all, even if you do something, that you haven't done it all doesn't negate, doesn't invalidate that you've done something. And that something stands, period. Full stop on that. It doesn't get diminished because there wasn't something that happened afterwards. What you did, you did. So, we hear things about, the morning and how to set ourselves up and taking an hour and this and that. And so, what I've heard from some moms is like, yeah, if I had an hour to myself in the morning, that would be the miracle. But what I tell them is that, okay, you don't have an hour because that's not what your life looks like, but we can find 15 minutes. We can
Mm-hmm.
find 15 minutes in the morning, preferably 15 minutes in the morning to set yourself up for your day, right? And what I mean by that is three things. The first thing is, since we're dealing with so much, Lisa, that's just abstract, we can't get our hands on it. We don't, that to do something and to start the day with some kind of accomplishment, something that has an end.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I have come to connect with the beauty of the full to empty dishwasher. That when I get to the dishwasher, when I get to the dishwasher, it's full, but I can get it to empty. And then it is done. It is
Mm-hmm.
done for that moment. Check.
Right.
Connect with our circadian rhythm. So step one is doing something concrete that has an endpoint
Mm-hmm.
that's doable. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is getting outside for even a couple of minutes and connecting with your circadian rhythm. It's just every piece of research out there is like, if you go outside, you don't have to have a big backyard. You can just get outside, look at the sky. It doesn't matter, but just do it. I know in New York, and I'm going to just say this, I am not good in cold weather, but I have figured out I am the queen of layering. And so how to layer up and just get out for a few minutes. It doesn't take much, but it will do much for you. And the third
Mm-hmm.
thing is the focus, and this is a good time that you can use your 4 + 4 = 8 and
Mm-hmm.
get you ready. So before the day fully begins, you have set yourself up by accomplishing something, connecting with yourself and with our circadian rhythms, like the basic components of who we are. And part 3 is starting with focus also. And so when you put those 3 pieces together, when you put those 3 steps together, just like you wouldn't go out, and run a marathon without warming up or training, that to set yourself up for your day,
Mm-hmm.
short and easy way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much you get back from doing that because you're starting from
Yeah.
versus starting from step 1. You wait while you're still in bed, you're looking at your emails. What does that set you up for?
Anxiety. No.
Yes,
At least
yeah.
these days, between everything that's going on with COVID that's in your emails and everything that's going on with, the election. I mean, yes, it's very stressful.
hmm And there's just never been a time like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that I say to people often is about being kind to themselves, because this is just as there has never been a time like this. Be kind to yourself. This is hard right
Mm.
now.
And sometimes with parents who put so much expectation on themselves, they don't feel that they've done enough, or oh well, I'll take care of myself. I'll do that after I buy the 3 pounds of potatoes. And so when we take a look and see, well, where are we on our own set of priorities? Where are we in terms of taking care of ourselves? Because we're anchoring, we're the go-tos. We're the anchoring people for those people who rely on us. And so if your way of taking care of yourself happens after you finish whatever it is, including buying 3 pounds of potatoes, at least put yourself on the same level as the potatoes.
Right.
You're one rung below potatoes. And so what is that saying? You know, because it's an issue because we don't really have a great word. And I just want to share this with you. I mean, in terms of self, we have selfless or selfish. And so if we're less than self, no self, and we're absolutely full of self, which has also its own negative connotation, obviously, what is that space that is self that is okay? And I'm not sure that we have that in the general vocabulary yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so we often put ourselves at the end of the list, or not at all.
Yes, if we and very much so, if we make it on the list after the potatoes, that's also a good start. And oftentimes we don't even make it. We don't even put ourselves on the list.
Hmm. Right. And we feel selfish if we do.
Yes. And just, kind of going back to the children, I mean, if we think about it, and I've been thinking about this a lot with the kids who are virtual, who are hybrid. And so the amount of transition, not only for parents, but for children, that is required of going from a half day of virtual school to a half day of in school to there are some kids who go 2 days a week full time in school and the other time they're virtually. I mean, we're talking about different parts of your brain, different ways of anchoring yourself, different levels of expectations. I mean, when your kids were little, right? And with little kids, you say, okay, well, first we're doing this and then we're doing that, and we get into routines.
And that comforts them to have
Absolutely.
those
And
routines.
us.
And us, both, the kids and us. It regulates both.
Yes, yeah, it's a beautiful point of co-regulation. Um, But with all of the transition going on, that there isn't a routine necessarily, or the routine changes. It's not, there isn't adequate sameness from one day to the next. And so that becomes its own stressor. And
Mm-hmm.
from a child's perspective, I mean, as parents, we've learned, and we also have our own difficulties with transitions and the kinds of demands that transitions make on us. But if
Mm-hmm.
we think about these little kids who are in elementary school, right, and that they're going from one thing to the next, but it's different. They're going back to school, but it's not back to school because it's not the school that they've known.
Right. And they're now expected to keep a mask on too. You
Yeah.
know, I have one client who was gonna try to fly to have Thanksgiving with her father in Chicago, from the West Coast,
Mhm.
with her 2-year-old. But 2-year-olds have to keep a mask on the whole time once you're past 2 on a plane. And so they tried it. They did some trial runs at home and
Yes.
found it was a no-go, that this child just was not at that level of, it just wasn't within his capacity to keep a mask on for an extended period of time. So she had to cancel that. But it's just, those kinds of expectations are really quite a lot. And even for school age kids, I imagine the
Yeah.
whole, mask issue being big.
Well, one of the things that I tell parents, I mean, look, it's always worth a try, is that, sometimes, we go to, well, that's just the rule. But the other part of it is, with young children, is that you can tell them that this is a great thing that they're doing to help, and that children want to feel empowered. Children want to feel that they're important and that they
Hmm.
have impact. And
Yeah.
so often, not always, and it doesn't have to be every single day, but often, if you frame it with children and you let them know what a great contribution they're doing, how they're being so helpful by doing this, and you're acknowledging them, you're recognizing them, you're giving them that positive reinforcement from the heart,
Yeah.
that they can connect with that and really feel more proud of,
Hmm.
about doing this, because as a little person, when everything in the world is kind of, you're looking up, to be
Yeah.
able to do your own part can really feel very positive
Hmm.
and a
Yeah.
point of pride for them.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
When-
And so, and sometimes, look, it's you can start with your child at home and see if they can put it on for 10 seconds, for 30 seconds, for a minute. And you
Mhm.
start slowly. The way that, you desensitize about something else, you can begin to desensitize about masks. If you're wearing paper masks, or if you have some kind of a cloth mask, have your child decorate it.
Mhm.
Get out the Sharpies, have them
Yeah.
decorate it, have them be able to connect with it in a different kind of way, rather than the terrible thing that they have to put on. So that
Mhm.
if we can find a space, and I want to say, look, I'm a mom, and things aren't easy, and they don't work necessarily every day. But if we can help children have buy-in, if we can
Mhm.
help them feel that they're a part of it, and there's something positive that they're doing, that this is their mask and they've worked on it, uh, maybe that helps.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit. And start wherever you can. It may be too much for your child to put a mask on, and for you to take them into the store. That may be
Mhm.
too much. But maybe at home, they can put it on, just put it on and take it off, even if
Mhm.
you have to start there, and slowly, slowly
Mhm. Get them
see
more
a
comfortable.
way to help them become more comfortable with a sensation that they haven't experienced.
Right. Yeah, that none of us are very familiar with.
Yep,
You
yep.
know, And we're having a hard time getting adults to wear them too.
Yeah. But also, as hard as things are, and it's important also, because and I tell parents that, there are times that your kids may be sad, and there are times that your kids may be angry, and there are times that you can be sad and angry and frustrated, and that, we're so we've been so misrepresented by feelings in
Hmm.
that they're probably wondering what am I meaning by this? And what I mean is that oftentimes we've been taught that feelings are dichotomous, that
Mm.
feelings go into two bins. There's good feelings and there's bad feelings, right?
Oh yeah,
And rather than there are feelings that are maybe more comfortable than other feelings,
sure.
but that doesn't mean that they're bad feelings.
Hmm.
And to allow ourselves and to allow our children to be able to embrace and experience that full rainbow of feelings, because that gives texture and
Hmm.
nuance and finesse of meaning to our lives and our experiences.
Yeah,
Don't be,
definitely.
so if your kid is crying or if you're crying, it's okay. There's, the tears are okay. The smiles are okay. It's all part of the experience
Yeah,
of humanity and texture of living.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's a totally normal reaction to this hard time. I mean, the range of human emotions is normal in normal times too. But also, especially right now, it's really important because more of those things that usually got put in the negative bin are coming up. You
Yes,
know, that's fine.
and there can also be an acknowledgement. I mean, look, COVID and the difficulties of COVID can hit in all kinds of ways. I remember, during times of quarantine when someone wanted to drop something off and just outside, not come in, but just drop something off. And I saw a friend that I hadn't seen in a very long, with a mask, with just to
Yeah.
drop something else. I started crying
Uh-huh.
because sometimes just the reality of it and the impact of it just gets to us. And
Yeah.
we need those, we need those times. And people may be at the end of their, what I call the patience tank. People may be, and so instead of going, oh, they're so awful, or they're having, miserable, or this or that, it's like, well, today may be their day. Today can just be their day, that it's just hit you differently. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe your week is, you're keeping it together that week, and maybe next week at some point something happens with you and that's your day. But
Mm-hmm.
we can all have our days or our hours or our moments or our mornings, and that when we understand that can just happen. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean it's forever, it's for now.
Yeah.
And be able to hold the embrace
Yeah.
figuratively, if not literally, to hold the embrace figuratively. And it may not be you that day who's doing it. Maybe it's someone else who's
Hmm.
holding the embrace,
Yeah.
but it'll cycle. And it can come from a 3-year-old who's
Hmm.
holding the embrace.
Yes, it can.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's really important, you know. And I found that it's really, I mean, if you have the luxury of having an outside space, kids can be, for them to get some energy outside can be really important. Like you were saying, for us as adults to go out and,
Oh,
that us for our circadian rhythms. But I think for kids too, that, you know, um, again, they may need layers too if it's getting colder.
yes.
We've getting colder even here in California, although for us, the temperature probably is not the same. But it, it just, but just getting outside and being outside.
Get outside, get them moving, figure something out. Do like the most simple scavenger hunt. Whatever it is, hide something. Kids love finding things. Hide
Hmm.
things outside.
Hmm.
play little games that don't require a lot of effort, energy, or any kind of, real serious pre-planning. And
Mm-hmm.
get your child outside, get them stomping, have them clean up leaves, if they want to do that, have them jump on leaves. You know, this is the time to loosen up a little bit in the service of helping people cope. Um, Wash potatoes, go outside, whatever it is, have a race. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, have a race, just whatever you can think of. Take your balloons, throw them around. Whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you can think of is
Mm-hmm.
really fine to do. Have kids throwing balls is good. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Playing catch is good. Whatever you can think of. Go back to old games of red light, green light, one, two, three. Um, and have some fun. And certainly, and this I have given as a prescription for some of the teenagers and young adults that I work with, is go watch something funny. Go watch comedy. We need to make sure that we laugh.
Yes, I've definitely prescribed this to adults that I've worked with too.
Yeah.
Just you need some humor. You need a break. Go watch something that'll just make you laugh. It might be something you've seen a million times, but just something that makes you laugh.
Yes, laugh. Laughter is wonderful. And also, of course, we haven't mentioned it, but yet specifically, but sleep.
Yes.
You need to sleep. Whatever it is really can wait until tomorrow. And it's a way of putting yourself first. The thing this is such a special time in history. And our children, whether they're little or big, we are going to remember this time. It's going to stay with them and it's going to stay with us forever. And there's an aspect of this time that it's like we're writing a family book. We're writing the book every day of our family during COVID. And so, what is it that you want to write in the book for your family? I mean, if you want to literally make a book, this is a great thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're figuratively making a book of what have what have I shown my child in terms of coping? What am I showing my child in terms of feeling? What am I showing my child in terms of how I'm staying regulated or being able to tolerate, sadness or being able to tolerate uncertainty? What is it that we're modeling? What is going to be written? What am I writing in that book?
Mm-hmm.
That's the book of our family at this time. And even if you can't write the story of COVID, you every single day, you literally are writing the story of your family during this time and what you all can take from it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
and hold on to and have it be a place of importance, of something that you go back to and you can talk about the hard times and the silly times and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. But it can also be a tremendous time of learning and of learning how to be together and really be in the messiness and gushiness and juiciness of
Mm-hmm.
what family life looks like. Because
Mm-hmm.
family is not pristine,
No, it is not.
nor
No.
should it be, nor
Mm-hmm.
should it be. And
Right.
and that with family comes, there's another word, comes forgiveness.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
we end the day, people have had missteps, people have had miswords, people have had all sorts of things, and
Mm-hmm.
that there is forgiveness and the optimism. I mean, and I mean this really from my heart, that and the optimism of what is it? What page are you going to write in your family book? This is
Uh-huh.
Friday or this is Tuesday. What is Saturday going to look like? What do you want to write in that book
Mm-hmm.
of your family story
Yeah.
of of our family during COVID?
Yeah. I think that's such a nice way to think about. This is something that we are all going to go through, but, and that is going to be remembered. Um, it's definitely significant. It's the most different thing that's happened probably to any of us in our lifetime.
Mhm.
And, what does that mean? And how did our family cope? And what did we do?
Yeah. What is the story? What is the story of our family? And actually, if anyone wants to kind of chronicle with photographs or take short notes or have each family member contribute something, then
Mm-hmm.
there are ways of taking that and getting it bound in hardcover,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
literally literally having that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I meditate in the morning during my outside time. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes I'll take a photograph. And because the seasons are changing, the sky looks different, whatever that is, and I'll send it to someone. And that has become, in a sense, a journal
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Of this time.
of this time.
Mm-hmm.
And so as much as we want it to be over, we can't get there this second. So while we're here in this, think in terms of what it is that we can do, what it is that you can do, what do you want to do, and how can you make this, not every second of every day, but just how can you make this also be a meaningful time? Because the time, you're right, Lisa, the time is going to come when it will be over. What
Mm-hmm.
we take from it with us won't be over.
Right. Right. And there is the opportunity of it to really connect with our families, in ways that we don't always slow down and do. Um,
Hmm.
in a big like stop, sign of, we've got to do something, having to do things differently, but we can, that can be meaningful too. That, like you said, it's not all negative. There's some real positives that come out of this.
Right. And just because you can't be physically together doesn't mean that you can't connect.
Absolutely.
Connection can happen right here, right now, as it is right here, right now, with us together on our screens. And
Yeah.
for those people who are going to be part of this community when they
Hmm.
come, when they come and watch.
Yeah. And that feels really good. I mean, I know for me, doing these has been really important because it's a sense of connecting with people that I really like, and it's fun, but also it gives me a part of my professional identity that I don't have going to conferences or meeting up with people that I used to do in my regular
Mhm.
life
Yes.
pre-COVID. Um, you know, and it's really different. And so this is nice to have this piece of it.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And we can often, kind of hide. We're busy. We're all busy. Busy can be, just something that kind of it becomes a shield. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. And it's not that we aren't, but that things are different. So we're not flying off, we're not running off to different places. And so there's a different level of being, there's a different level of staying put. And with that, it gives us an opportunity, but as parents, as people, to really think through what is it that's very important to me, especially as we spend so much time with family and with friends and with colleagues in all ways that we can. What's the noisiness that when this is over, I really don't want to bring back into my life?
Yeah.
What is meaningful for me? Who are the people that I'm connecting with that when I am with them, just like this, I feel, I just feel great. That there's something that is special about being with that person, that the ideas fly, that
Yeah.
that energy is there. Who are the people I'm feeling with that with? Who are the people that I feel are draining? Okay, let me take a look and really look at my world in a
Hmm.
quieter way than I would ordinarily or maybe never.
Right, right. And I think that's really important. Yeah. And who do I want to make time with and be with? And
Yes,
what does that look like? And yeah, what are those really meaningful connections?
yes. And be able to say, whether it's in a relationship with your a spouse, a partner, whoever, a friend, I really like this. I'd like to have some more of this. Or, that other thing that didn't work so well for me. A little bit less of that would be good. And
Yeah.
really have this opportunity for an even deeper connection with ourselves,
Hmm.
and to allow that for ourselves, because it will only, as we get through to the other side of this, will only come through it stronger,
Hmm.
stronger, and even more clear. And
Yeah.
clarity is an ongoing phenomenon. The clarity
Hmm.
of one moment, the clarity of one day can be different than the clarity of the next day,
Yes.
as we know. But to be in the process of clarity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's
Yes.
definitely things from this period that I would want to keep and that, are important to me, including about who I connect to and all of that. And I just think it's so important for people to really be thinking about that and not just rushing back, whenever that is, to our very busy lives, that, some of that is distraction or not helpful or not,
Yeah.
doesn't really fuel us or anybody else.
And that we can have consciousness about this. We can have clarity about this, and we can make choices and decisions. And
Hmm.
it's really part of our personal power and our personal empowerment, because power doesn't come from outside. Power really comes from inside.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that when we can become more comfortable with change, and we can be comfortable with our discomfort, or
Yeah.
more comfortable or more accepting of uncomfortable, because that's part of what life is about, is that
Mhm.
in order to be able to be so predictable, you have to be relatively constricted.
Very.
And as you open the aperture, as you open your world, there's more uncertainty that comes in. And as we can use this time to become more available for uncomfortableness, if we
Hmm.
become more available for the ambiguity and the uncertainty, and if we can get a little bit more comfortable with that and not necessarily be so fearful,
Hmm.
what a power that gives us.
Hmm. Definitely.
It's an incredible power to be able to say, I'm not sure exactly how this is going to go, but I'm going to give it a try.
Yeah.
And whether it goes well or whether it doesn't, you've had an experience, a deep experience of yourself against a different backdrop.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
that's really, as parents, that's what we're asking of our children to do all the time, right?
Right.
We're, we are asking them to continue to experience themselves against a different backdrop, in front of a different backdrop. And that we want them to have the confidence, we want them to have the resilience, we want them to have that give it a try orientation to challenge. right? Because that's what happens with children. They have to learn and experience what it's like to be in different backdrops of learning a new, from learning a new language to making a friend to trying something they haven't done before because they're little. So there are lots of things that they've never tried before.
Mm-hmm.
And it behooves us as the parents to
Mm-hmm.
continue doing that with and for ourselves.
Yeah.
And as we ask our children to go forward into their own uncertainty, ambiguity, and certain levels of risk of trying,
Mm-hmm.
that we are the ones who really must model that. We are the ones who need to be able to do that for ourselves as we ask our children in different ways every single day, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's trying a new activity or trying a new food. We're
Uh-huh.
asking them every single day to go forth with some level of courage, right?
Yeah.
And we need to go forth with our own courage. And they'll get it. They'll get it. They'll see us doing that.
Yeah.
It's
I think
not in,
the modeling is so much more important than the telling, you know. um, and I think that in general is a really important parenting advice piece, of, if you want your children to act a certain way, it's really important that you do it too. That you do it will actually make it more natural for them to assume it.
especially when we ask and we don't necessarily think about it, how much we do ask. We're asking them to put on a different texture on their feet, put another food into their mouths, go to a place that they haven't been before and can't picture in their minds.
Right.
There's so much that we ask of them for all, for good reasons. You
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to connect with what that's like through our own experience of stretching ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think these particular times do call for stretching ourselves in different ways and for our kids to do that too, so, it's, I think, okay to show our frustration around doing that too, or our fear, or all the feelings that go on so that they can, see the process, not just the outcome of that.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't all bright shiny object. This is hard.
Yeah.
This is hard, and there's nothing wrong with calling hard hard.
Mm-hmm.
But it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that we stop.
No, it doesn't at all. And as parents, that's the one thing we don't do. We don't stop being a parent. Like you said, forever. It's
Ever.
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me, Risa. And if you do have those links to those resources, I would love to put them up with this piece. So just let me know, because I think parents could use all the resources they can get right now.
Yeah. And Lisa, it's such just a profound joy to do this with you, and just to have this go back and forth and just be in the moment of ideas and heartfulness with you. Um, and I'm just thrilled that people will, have an opportunity to experience this as well.
Great. Well, thanks so much. And I just really appreciate you being here today. It's been so much fun and
It's
so
been
helpful.
wonderful. Thanks so much, Lisa.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.